His lungs burned as if he weren't breathing oxygen at all, but the choking red dust that spat up with every footstep. Footsteps taking him nowhere. This was the middle of nowhere. That much he knew. The middle of nowhere, and still the world was strangling him. The low branches stretching to take their ounce of flesh, to welcome him to the neighbourhood permanently. It had so nearly succeeded. But he escaped. Now he was running for his life, a throwaway phrase that he never believed he would actually have to realise. He didn't feel alive, far from it. The crushing fear of capture consumed everything, his focus constrained to each step, each rocky scramble and dive between trees. He felt like an animal, reduced to base instincts of survival, everything classed as simply dangerous or safe. The long fingers of the relentless sun reached through the trees, becking the ground where it found land, dappling the bare earth in light, but offering no glowing path to freedom. There were trees and rocks, trees and more fucking rocks. He had no idea whether he was heading towards civilization or further into the outback. Around another rock scorched by the sun, his calves tightened, as if the manacles were still weighing him down. The cold, rusted metal he thought would chain him until that psycho decided to kill him. He couldn't stop. Despite the pain, fatigue, and crippling lack of air in his lungs, he couldn't stop. Stopping meant death.
Welcome to the Good Reading Magazine podcast, sponsored by Pantera Press. Good Reading is a monthly magazine dedicated to books and reading and aims to help readers discover their next favourite book. You can find out more about the books discussed on today's podcast at goodreadingmagazine.com.au.
Hi and welcome to the Good Reading Podcast. Angus Dalton here with you. You just heard James Delargy reading from 55, his new thriller novel set in outback Western Australia. It's set in a sleepy town called Willbrook and centres on Chandler, a police sergeant who's fairly content dealing with the small town crimes of traffic violations and the odd punch-up at the pub. But things in Willbrook are shaken up when a young man in bloodied clothes stumbles into the police station and says he's escaped a serial killer who kidnapped and drugged him. Not long after, another man with the exact same story is marched into the station at the end of a shotgun. The two men accuse each other of being the killer, and then things start to get very complicated. James is here to chat with us about the book. Hi, James. Thanks for coming along.
No problem. It's nice to be here.
So you were born and raised in Ireland, as people might have guessed by the accent, lived in South Africa, Australia, and Scotland, and now you live in semi-rural England. Whereabouts in England are you?
I'm based around Cambridge. Obviously, it's a very sort of university town, but yes, that's I've moved out there.
I get this image of you like looking out over like this drizzly landscape with rolling green hills as you write this book that's so set in like the baked heat of the outback, which I think is hilarious. Did that actually happen? Did you write it in Cambridge or?
Yeah, it's written. It's written mostly in around Cambridge and the sort of kind of rolling green hills. So yeah, it's completely the opposite sort of landscape as to where the book is written. So. But imagination is everything.
Absolutely. So how did you come to write this book set in the outback?
Well, I lived in Australia for a year, and I travelled around Australia as well, and I spent some time in Western Australia, and it's just a wonderful landscape. The whole of Australia is a wonderful landscape, but there's something about West Australia. It's sort of majestic and murky. And sort of malevolent and sort of magnificent at the same time. It's full of possibilities.
How come you've moved around so much in your life? Are you just one of those wandering souls, or is it because of work stuff, or?
It's a good question. Just because it's the opportunity. I thought to take the opportunity to move around before, settling down somewhere to experience where you might want to live, and experience parts of the world that you might not get a chance otherwise to experience.
When you first saw the outback, what were some of your first-hand experiences there? Like, were you camping? What sort of places were you visiting?
Well, one of the experiences is in the book, where we were on the Gun Barrel Highway between Alice Springs and Perth, going overland. And so we stopped for a comfort break, let's say. And so I sprinted out of the van and in behind these sort of bushes and straight into this huge big spider web.
Oh no.
And so I spent then frantically for the next minute ripping this spider web off myself and panicking that I was about to be bitten by something that obviously is very famous in Australia. So
Yeah, well, the spiders here can actually kill you, right?
Yeah.
So that would have been very nerve-wracking.
well, yes. So
Any other wildlife encounters of the more slithery kind, or?
yeah, there's plenty of snakes, yes, and just sort of coming across. But most of the snakes I've met I didn't come across them sort of in a surprise sense. They were sort of just lying in the sun. But yeah, there's plenty of wildlife in Australia to intrigue.
It's funny because with the outback, I think people even who live in Australia, particularly on like the eastern seaboard and particularly in the major cities, don't really venture out into the outback ever. Like when we go on holiday, we sort of just slide up and down the coast, and the outback is sort of seen as this sort of mythical place overrun with dingoes and serial killers. Did you come to Australia with a similar sort of perception of what the outback was?
It's hard to say. I didn't really, because the outback is quite, obviously the city is quite cosmopolitan, and then there's small towns, and then you sort of go more and more rural. And yeah, the outback, it's different because it's obviously a harsher climate, and there's sort of a fight to get enough water, get enough food, etc. And some of the sort of fruit picking, etc. Is quite popular in Western Australia. And yeah, there's some experiences in staying in hostels, etc. Some very weird and wonderful characters as well. So yeah, the outback, it's vegetated and remote, but whenever you get out there, there's such a sort of vastness that's hard to describe, actually.
I was very entertained because one of your characters in 55 describes the outback as an experiment by God to judge the most extreme conditions life could prosper in, which I thought was a pretty great description, because when you see, obviously, as you say, it can be vegetated, but also you've just got that feeling of emptiness as well, and the feeling that how could anything live out here, especially on a hot day, I guess.
Yeah, I very much so. Yeah, whenever you travel out, it's just the sun is just relentless. That the landscape's relentless. You look to the horizon, and it's just nothing but shrubs and trees, and just nothing breaks the skyline at all.
Yeah,
so it's fascinating.
Yeah. So where did this ambition to write a book come from? Like, were you, as you sort of travelled around, did you have this idea that you always wanted to write a book? Was it just seeing the outback and you were like, oh my God, I'd love to set a story here? Like, where did that come from?
It actually, I only began to actually write. I actually started writing screenplays after I came back from Australia. And of the first book that I attempted to write was to do with sort of somebody coming back home and then finding out that they had a child in Australia. Not true, I'll just point that out. But or not based in fact. So it just began from there. So I started writing screenplays, and then because I never thought I could actually write a novel, because if you look at a novel, 100,000 words, you think, well, there's no way I can write 100,000 words and make them coherent and into a viable story. So then I did screenplays for a while, but those didn't really go anywhere. And then so I started planning to write novels. And so once I sat down to plan how I could go through a whole novel, then 100,000 words doesn't seem quite as daunting as it first was.
Okay, so the actual writing of it maybe wasn't as challenging as you thought it would be.
No, the planning, I find the planning more daunting than the actual writing, but because my outlines would be quite in depth. So once you come down to actually do the writing, it's a bit less daunting if you've got an outline that's planned. Obviously, there are parts once you get to the actual writing, some of the outline might vary somewhat, and then so you have to think again of how this is going to work. But
Yeah, but you've got the actual architecture there.
Yes,
Yeah.
as I say. Yes, if
Yeah.
you have the skeleton in place, then it's easier to put the flesh onto the bones.
Great. So where did the idea for this novel sort of bubble up, this contradictory sort of case that this detective is faced with?
It actually came from being at home in Ireland, just walking. And it's somewhere that the complete sort of opposite to outback Australia, like lush, green, etc. Everything you could think about Ireland, that's what it was. And I just thought of the idea of what would happen if two men entered a police station somewhere remote and just told exactly the same story. You know, how would you be able to tell the difference? How you have no third party to corroborate one or the other. So that's what the main idea came from.
I watched a trailer for 55, and it was absolutely fantastic and really, really scary. Like, it's got all those sort of like horror movie things of bloodied people dragging themselves through the dirt and creepy ants crawling everywhere and like blood circling a drain. How scary does 55 get? Like, do you view it as a bit of a horror or more thriller, or?
It is more of, I would say it's more of a thriller than a horror, but obviously anything that involves sort of the tension of a town being under threat and people being under threat will have some sort of horror aspects to it. But it's more of a thriller than a horror. But there is sort of the tension. I try to keep the tension throughout the book.
Yeah. Do you think it's just because the outback as a setting lends itself to that more sort of horror twist that it becomes a bit more scary, I guess, in that sense?
Well, yeah, it's, I suppose, all horror is to do with sort of isolation, and so it's the isolation of the town and sort of the isolation of the people within the town. So yeah, there would be a horror aspect in that. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about Chandler, this man that you sort of throw into the mystery who has to untangle it.
Well, Chandler is essentially happy in his own life. He's a single father. He's got 2 kids. So his sort of main focus is on making sure the kids are okay. But he also sort of is the sergeant of the town. So he feels a responsibility to sort of make sure that his inhabitants are safe. So he's not a person who really is looking for this sort of kind of high profile sort of murder case, but also feels compelled to involve himself when it threatens people in his town.
Did you have to do any research in terms of the actual sort of the police side of things and how like a crime would actually be investigated and that sort of thing?
Yeah, very much so, because obviously the systems in every country are different. There's different ranks, different ways of so obviously state police here and the local police, and sort of all the inspectors, etc. But again, and you have to investigate. Obviously, you have to investigate how they solve a crime and forensics and that type of. There's quite a lot of research goes into the actual sort of background of building up a knowledge of that before you can actually sort of plan out what should happen.
Yeah. So what sort of sources of information did you go to get a handle on all of that?
Oh, there's lots. That's the good thing about Google these days. I don't have to search through 100,000 books to find, snippets of information about what the police would do in certain situations. So I used a lot of from even the Western Australian sort of police force website. A lot of information on sort of from sort of lawyer, firms of lawyers saying that if you're arrested, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't say, this is what you should say, etc. Just to build up an idea of what the characters would do and what the police would do in the same situation.
Yeah. Did you look at any real cases of kidnappings or serial killings that have occurred out in the outback, or?
Well, yeah, I looked at quite a number of the serial killers, obviously, because one of the characters in the book has quite a fascination with one of the police constables has quite a fascination with serial killers. So yeah, I researched obviously even Millet and others as well as some American serial killers as well, just to sort of as background, and as sort of what, you know, motivation as well. You know, what does motivate, you know, a serial killer.
Yeah, everyone's got that friend, don't they, that's like their thing, the obsession with serial killers. Are you that friend, or was it not until this book that you began to sort of really look into it?
No, I gotta suggest that I'll not name names, but I think I have some friends who are more obsessed with serial killers than I am. I'm just more obsessed with information. I like information, and I like putting things in my books that sort of intrigue me, sort of snippets of information that I'll learn about and go, oh, that's very interesting, so I'll put that in. You know, something that I don't know and just found out and thought, oh, well, maybe somebody would be interested in that.
What is the significance of this number 55 in the book?
Well, obviously, the two characters come in and claim that they're going to be the 55th victim, and so the police, Chandler has to solve the crime before the 55th victim's killed. So the number is very important in the book. You know, there's also 55 chapters in the book.
Oh, cool.
Which, yes, that wasn't that's more a coincidence than that.
Oh, really? Not part of the architecture?
That wasn't
No.
part of the architecture,
Okay.
because chapters were sort of added and chapters were cut, and it just so happened in the end that there is 55
Wow.
chapters, and that's something I didn't even realize until the print of the book.
Oh, that's almost creepy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So 55 is you know, it's a big number, and it's also I don't know, something about the number. You know, it's quite. I don't know what it is, but it's just something that says it's sort of familiar, but, you know, creepy. I don't know. It's hard to describe actually what it just. But it plays a big part in the book.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. That's sort of why I asked, because there's something enigmatic and weird about it, that number. So
yeah, the fact that I don't know whether it's the fact that it repeats itself, you know, just 5 and 5,
Yeah.
you know, but
somehow 44 doesn't sound as scary.
no, yeah, I haven't thought about it. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, you're quite right. Yeah.
So we have Chandler, the police sergeant, chatting early on in the book with the first man that comes forward and says that he's been kidnapped and just escaped a serial killer. And they have sort of this glancing conversation about religion. And then he also has described that there's a cross on the wall of the serial killer. And also, just as all of this sort of chaos goes down, one of Chandler's children is sort of rehearsing for her first communion. So is it right to say that religion sort of becomes a part of this mystery?
Well, yeah, religion certainly plays a part in the mystery, because some of the characters do sort of are religious themselves, and it's part of their belief system, it's part of who they are as well. But that's the same as, you know, a lot of people in real life are, you know, obviously religion is a big part of their lives. It's hard. Don't know what to say really about it, other than more than religion does play a part in it.
Yeah, coming from Ireland, do you notice that there's like a difference in terms of like the religion there? Because there's like, maybe it's a stereotype, but there's a perception that religion is very deeply embedded in Irish life, I guess, and Australia sees itself as more of like a secular country, I guess. Would you say that's sort of accurate? Or
that is certainly what, you know, that, as you say, that's certainly the stereotype that if you think of Australia, you don't really pin a specific religion on the country, but Ireland itself sort of is expanding from being very secular to more expansive in its views as well. But obviously there is the bedrock of Catholicism still within Ireland, and it's obviously going to be that way, and obviously in North there's both there's Protestantism and Catholicism as well. So, and they will be bedrocks as well for a while.
Yeah. Whereabouts did you actually grow up in Ireland?
I grew up in the north, on the north coast, in the middle of countryside. Growing up in the middle of the countryside, obviously invention plays a big part of your upbringing as well. So you learn to create things, you learn to create games, you learn to create, worlds. I even created a newspaper when I was younger.
You created a newspaper?
Yeah, and it was very, very, very bad.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it was awful.
No front page scoops or anything?
No front. Not very much happened to make front page scoops.
What community was this newspaper serving? Just the household or the school?
This was serving mainly family and wider family, and anybody who took pity and actually purchased it. It was a very second-rate affair.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it takes any good publication a while to get going.
Well,
so, yeah, be kind. What sort of books were you reading at this? Like, what books were you raised on?
Oh, I must have read about 40 Hardy Boys novels.
Oh, yeah.
I used to fall asleep with sort of my fingers in the pages and wake up in the morning and still sort of lying there. But so, yeah, Hardy Boys novels... they're all, as you say, they're all mystery novels. So yeah, that would be the foundation of maybe where I have the fascination with writing crime and mystery novels. So, and then I tried to move on to some other ones. The Count of Monte Cristo is a favourite. It's a fantastic revenge read. So.
Yeah. In your adult life, do you mostly read crime and thriller, or?
Yes, I still would. Yes, I would. Yeah, I read it. Yeah, I read a lot of Ian Rankin and Lee Child and Val McDermid. And, there's too many tonight, like Steve Kavanagh and Anne Cleeves, Cara Hunter. I'll just stop there, otherwise I'll be going for forever with this.
Yeah, there are so many legends in that genre. Was there anyone in particular that sort of like really inspired you to go and write in that genre, or a book you read and you were sort of like, because a lot of authors speak about that moment that they read a book and they're like, oh, I could do this, I want to do this. Was there a book like that for you, or?
Well, Stephen King, because he can write in so many different genres, and I tried writing in a number of different genres. I've written horror novels and zombie novels and sort of contemporary sort of dramas, historical fiction, until I came around to writing crime and mystery as well. And I think now crime and mystery is what I like to write more than anything else. But yeah, Stephen King's work, throughout the years, is fantastic.
Yeah, any books of Stephen King's in particular?
I would say others, from even something like The Long Walk to some of the even more Desperation. I like Desperation, and it's not a widely known one. But then there's obviously the classics. There's Cujo, which may be where I get some of the horror aspect in the crime, right? But yeah, there's just everything that he's written. Pretty much.
There's so much to choose from with Stephen King, because he does write a book like every 6 months. It's ridiculous. His output. It's so good. It's interesting that you tried quite a few different genres in your novel writing before you sort of came to this book, which is obviously going to be a huge success, it looks like. And I mean, for me as a reader, like reading it, it's got all of those like ingredients that make reading a crime thriller so pleasurable for a reader. Just like that feeling that you just can't stop reading it, which is so cool. But what was it about writing in this genre that was so attractive to you over the other ones?
Mystery. I love a mystery. I love not knowing what's I love twists at the end of books. I love twists in the middle. I just love even the solve crime, solving the crime, people who are under pressure people who are put under pressure, and taken out of their comfort zone. Because obviously Chandler in this book is quite happy with what he's doing. It's quite a small town, it's a quiet town, and then he's taken out, and now he's in this situation where he's got a mass killer. He has to find out who the serial killer is. So that is it's a mystery aspect really intrigues me.
Yeah. So there's a lot of crime thriller readers, but then also there's a lot of crime thriller books as well. So this is your chance for a sales pitch. If there's a crime thriller reader wandering through a bookshop, why do you think they should pick up 55?
Because it's atmospheric, and it takes the reader into a place. It gives them a sense of isolation about this police sergeant against his colleagues, against the serial killer, and against the environment, and trying to solve who exactly is telling the truth.
It's such a good concept and executed so well. James, I've asked everything I wanted to. Thank you so much for coming so far to be with us, and enjoy the rest of your time in Australia, and thanks so much for chatting about 55.
No worries. Thanks very much, Angus. This was a fantastic podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Good Reading Podcast. 55 by James Delargy is out now from Simon & Schuster. You can get it from all good bookshops, including Good Reading's online store at goodreadingmagazine.com.au.